Welcome to Project 360 Official. I'm David Bew. Today we're going to explore an architectural masterpiece that was once the second largest house in the United States. Join me as we explore Shadowbrook, a symbol of luxury and tragedy. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our exciting episodes. The Shadowbrook story begins with Anson Phelps Stokes, born in 1838 into a wealthy New York family. His father was a hugely successful businessman, head of Phelps Dodge & Company, an import, export, and mining empire. This was no newfound wealth. The Stokes family had a long history, members of New York's elite, even later being included in Mrs. Astor's 400. Anson followed his father's footsteps, gradually taking control of the family business. His life took a new turn when he married Helen Phelps, the sole heiress to his father's multi-million-dollar fortune. The couple moved into a Madison Avenue townhouse in New York City and quickly had 9 children. But the hustle and bustle of New York was not the ideal place for a bunch of energetic kids. So they bought their first country house on Staten Island, a magnificent Second Empire-style mansion built in 1862. The lavish interior was preserved, with a large wood-paneled library, a valuable art collection, and tall bookshelves filled with novels for the children to enjoy. While the children played, Anson would sail on his yacht, enjoying himself until dusk. He kept himself in good shape, taking every opportunity to sail, hunt, or play sports with his friends and children. Over the years, however, the sparsely populated Staten Island countryside became crowded with relentless construction. The area seemed to have lost its charm as a place to escape the hustle and bustle of the city. Anson and Helen began looking for a new country home. They traveled to Massachusetts and began buying land, starting with a modest old house called Homestead. Now that their children were grown, they needed a house large enough to host social gatherings, especially date nights. Homestead seemed perfect. With more than 40 rooms, including grand classical halls and a huge ballroom with a minstrel gallery, Homestead was impressive. But they quickly realized they had outgrown the mansion. Just a few years after buying Homestead, Anson and Helen hired the architectural firm of McKim, Mead, and White to design what would become the second largest house ever built in the United States. From the start, Helen and Stanford White clashed. Helen fired Mr. White from the project and brought in a lesser-known architect, H. Neil Wilson, to oversee the construction of the house. The 100-room mansion took nearly 2 years to complete and involved a team of 500 workers. The sprawling Tudor Revival-style mansion boasts stucco walls interspersed with wooden beams, stone accents carved from rough marble, and a brown-tiled roof. The expansive garden was designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, a renowned landscape architect who worked on many major projects, including the planning of New York City's Central Park. He created areas for the active family to play a variety of sports and lawn games, including tennis courts, stables, and even a separate croquet court. Inside, the foyer is decorated with oversized furniture under a coffered ceiling, with intricate plasterwork and a large fireplace to welcome you with warmth. The Pompeian Hall, as it's called, is paneled with painted panels on both the walls and ceiling, with figures of people and horses carved into the bas-relief that runs throughout the room. Here, you'll find treasures the family collected from their travels abroad, including a tiger skin rug and exotic potted plants, paired with exquisite Chinese porcelain. The morning room continues this theme, with white walls and ceilings and intricate floral patterns that separate one corner of the room from a small tower. This room is decorated with floral motifs on all the furniture and fabrics. The walls are paneled in semicircles with plaster reaching up to the bas-relief. from which graceful plaster wreaths hang down on silk wallpaper. The main feature of the living room is the exaggerated Gothic fireplace, with spiraling vines carved into its upper bas-relief. Fluted Ionic columns are not only decorative in this house, but also provide necessary support for the vast ceilings. The library takes a more rustic approach, with natural wood details carved into Gothic arches and combined with the rough texture of the brickwork on the fireplace. Diamond-shaped windows are set beneath stained glass, adding to the cozy atmosphere provided by the English antiques that fill the room. Although the house has 3 dining rooms, this is the largest. The exposed ceiling beams are supported by large corbels, spaced to align with the wallpaper pattern on the semicircular board and batten wall panels. To give you an idea of how large this room is, the carpet is said to measure 30 by 48 feet. While guests certainly have plenty of space to be comfortable, no home of this scale would be complete without a ballroom. The rich wood paneling was carved by master carpenters, creating a seamless transition between each panel. The ceiling is truly unique to Shadowbrook, with a dizzying array of geometric shapes built up layer by layer and illuminated by electric lights in its medallions. The home continues with intricately crafted woodwork found in every nook and cranny. The second floor was reserved for guests, with more than 20 guest suites, and the third floor was reserved for the family, with each of the 9 children's bedrooms having its own bathroom, a rarity at the time, regardless of social class. Now that the house was complete, the Stokes could entertain guests as often as they pleased. They threw big Christmas and New Year's parties, inviting young guests to sleigh rides, while the men had fishing tournaments on the frozen ponds. But Anson and Helen's paradise did not last long. In the summer of 1899, Anson was riding around the grounds, one of his favorite activities, when something spooked the horse in the woods. The horse threw Anson from the saddle, sending him crashing into a tree. His leg was so badly damaged that it had to be amputated. Soon Anson could no longer enjoy golf, horseback riding, or any other sport. He and Helen decided to rent the house and move back to the city. Shadowbrook was rented for several years before being purchased by Henry W. Merrill. Merrill used the mansion as a hotel, with 100 guest suites scattered across the upper floors. The hotel failed, so after only 2 years of operation, Merrill sold Shadowbrook to Spencer Shutter, who enjoyed the property until 1909, when he was tried for antitrust violations. He eventually won the case, but in doing so he spent most of his fortune on legal fees. In a desperate situation, Spencer leased Shadowbrook to Maggie Vanderbilt for $15,000 a month, the equivalent of about $442,000 a month in modern dollars. Meanwhile, American steel magnate Andrew Carnegie's health was failing. His doctor advised him not to go to his beloved Scottish castle, but to stay closer to town, in the mountains where he could get some fresh air. That's when he decided to rent the brick house that Anson and Helen had built in Fairfield County, Connecticut, when they left Shadowbrook. It was a large mansion with immaculately maintained gardens. Inside, grand classically designed halls lead to large rooms with wood paneling. When Carnegie's daughter visited him here, she mentioned that the same family that built this house had also built a beautiful home in the Berkshires. Carnegie decided to find out more about the dream house his daughter had described. He discovered that Spencer Shutter no longer owned the property, although he was still collecting rent. In fact, the bank had foreclosed on his property. So Carnegie bought Shadowbrook from the bank and moved into one of the largest homes in the country to live out his final years. He lived there comfortably until his death in 1919. After Carnegie's death, his widow put the house up for sale. She sold it for a bargain price to the Jesuits of New England Province, who used it as a seminary until 1956. In 1956, tragedy struck. Shadowbrook House suddenly exploded. An investigation into the tragedy revealed that a large quantity of oil stored in barrels had ignited when a boiler malfunctioned. The explosion and subsequent fire reduced the house to rubble, claiming the lives of 5 people. There was no practical way to restore or rebuild Shadowbrook, so it was lost forever. What happened to the Stokes' other homes? The brick house in Connecticut, later used by their politically active adult children as a meeting place for the Communist Party USA, before being donated to the Sacred Heart Convent as a girls' school. Tragically, when the school closed in 1966, most of the house was demolished, with only 2 wings remaining, which were converted into single-family homes. Homestead eventually burned down the same year the Stokes moved out of Shadowbrook. Since the house was made entirely of wood, the only thing that survived the fire were the brick chimneys. The rest was a total loss. On Staten Island, when the Stokes family moved out, Anson developed several houses on the property to form a small residential area. He sold the main house to another member of Mrs. Astor's 400, John G. Wendell, who let the house fall into disrepair. By 1928, John had abandoned the property and it was demolished out of public safety concerns. But fortunately, one of their houses survived. Their townhouse at Madison and 37th in Manhattan, which later became the Morgan Library, has much of its facade intact. We've seen so many luxurious homes with different architectural styles that were once owned by the Stokes family. Which one has left the deepest impression on you? Do you have a favorite? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're at it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of Project 360 Official's adventures. See you in the next episodes, where we'll continue to unfold interesting stories about architecture and history.